Exclusive! One of the most well-connected royal journalists on the planet has told me that King Charles has dumped Prince Harry. Speaking on my globally renowned breakfast show on Talk TV, the fearless best-selling author Ingrid Seward, who has spent decades intimately close to the royal household, told me on my TV show that the king does not care about his son or his daughter-in-law Meghan Markle and has, and I quote, washed his hands of the Sussexes.
There comes a point in any relationship, between a parent and a child, between two people who have loved each other through years of difficulty, when the practical and the personal can no longer be separated, when the money and the emotion become the same conversation. Most of us have been there in some form. The parent who has been quietly helping a grown child through one financial difficulty after another, covering the gaps, absorbing the cost, telling themselves each time that this will be the last time. And then one morning something happens, a final demand, a broken promise, a public statement that goes too far. And the parent looks at the numbers on the page and understands, with a clarity that is painful precisely because it is so clear, that the helping has to stop. Not because the love has stopped. The love does not stop. But because continuing to help has begun to cost something that money cannot replace. It has begun to cost the truth. King Charles III reached that morning on March 10th, 2026. 6 days after his return, plan was rejected by the palace. 6 days after Harry had been told, in formal and final terms, that the institution he had spent 5 years publicly attacking was not prepared to offer him the hybrid role he had requested. 6 days after the door had been confirmed as shut. And in the quiet of that morning, the king authorized a decision that those close to him describe as the most difficult, purely financial decision of his reign. He eliminated Prince Harry's annual allowance. All $2.7 million of it. Gone. Effective immediately, with no provision for reinstatement. Today we are going to tell you the full story of that decision, what the $2.7 million actually was and where it came from, why Charles had continued paying it even through the years when Harry was publicly attacking the institution, what finally changed, and what the elimination of that allowance means for Harry's financial position, which was already before this decision in a state of serious crisis. We are going to take our time, because this story has layers that the headline number does not capture, and you deserve to understand all of them. So settle in, and let's begin. To understand what this decision means, you first need to understand what the $2.7 million actually was, because that figure has been reported without much explanation in the coverage this week. And without explanation, it is easy to misunderstand what Charles has actually done. Prince Harry is not a working royal. He has not been a working royal since January 2020, when he and Meghan announced their intention to step back from royal duties and move toward financial independence. At the Sandringham summit that followed, a meeting between Harry, Meghan, King Charles, who was then Prince of Wales, and Queen Elizabeth, the terms of that step back were agreed. Harry would no longer carry out official royal engagements. He would no longer receive publicly funded support for those engagements. He would no longer be entitled to use the resources of the royal household in the way that working members of the family do. What was not eliminated at that point was a separate and more personal financial arrangement, an arrangement that had nothing to do with official duties and everything to do with the private financial relationship between a father and his son. For most of Harry's adult life, a portion of his financial support came directly from Charles, first through the Duchy of Cornwall income that Charles controlled as Prince of Wales, and later, after September 2022, through Charles's private resources as king. This was not public money. It was not drawn from the sovereign grant, the funds that Parliament allocates for the official functions of the monarchy. It was Charles's own money, given privately to his son in the way that fathers with the means to do so support their children. The $2.7 million annually was the most recent form of that private support. Structured, documented, paid regularly. A financial foundation beneath Harry's California life that existed regardless of what Harry said publicly, regardless of what legal actions he brought, regardless of what interviews he gave or what books he published. Charles had maintained it through all of it, through the Oprah interview, through the Netflix documentary, through the memoir, through the lawsuit against the Daily Mail, through the $59 million bill sent to the palace in early March 2026. He had maintained it because he is a father, and because, whatever the institution required him to say publicly about his son's choices, the private financial support was the one remaining thread of the parental relationship that Charles had kept intact. Until March 11th, 2026. If you are watching this channel for the first time and you want to understand this story in full, and there is considerably more to it than the headline number, please subscribe right now. We cover the royal family at the depth and with the care these stories deserve. Hit subscribe, turn on your notifications, and every new video comes directly to you. It takes just a moment. Why the decision came at this specific moment rather than any of the many earlier moments when it might have come. On the morning of March 4th, 2026, Harry's California legal team sent a $59 million bill to Buckingham Palace. An itemized demand for King Charles to pay Harry's legal costs from the failed Daily Mail lawsuit, his private security arrangements, and $17 million in what Harry's team called opportunity cost, compensation for entertainment deals Harry had not been able to pursue because he was occupied with litigation. Charles rejected it the same day, publicly, with language that was, by the standards of royal communications, extraordinary in its directness. He called Harry's lawsuit a suicide mission. He said the palace would not pay a single penny toward debts arising from personal grievances and stubbornness. That rejection was final. Everyone understood it to be final. In the final week of February, Harry had submitted through intermediaries a formal proposal for a hybrid return to royal duties. A defined set of official functions, primarily around the Invictus Games, the international sporting competition for wounded and injured service personnel that Harry founded in 2014. A formal title. Some level of publicly funded security for his family when in the United Kingdom. In exchange, Harry offered a commitment to stop the public commentary. No more interviews, no more books, no more documentaries about the royal family. On the morning of March 9th, 2026, the palace rejected that proposal too. Formally and without invitation for further discussion, 3 reasons were communicated clearly. The timing made the proposal look financially rather than genuinely motivated. The palace did not accept the concept of a hybrid role as institutional policy, and the offer of silence from a man who had broken commitments before was not a currency the institution was prepared to trade in. Harry was, by all accounts of those around him in the days that followed, in a state of genuine shock. Not at the rejection itself, he had understood that rejection was possible, but at the completeness of it, at the absence of any opening, any conditional, any suggestion that a modified version of the proposal might find a different reception. The door was not just closed, it was locked from the inside. And then, On March 9, 2026, after the return plan rejection and after the $59 million bill had been sent, Harry gave an interview. Not to a British outlet, not to a journalist who had covered the royal family for years and who understood the institutional sensitivities involved. To an American podcast with a large audience and a format that invites the kind of extended, relatively unstructured conversation in which things get said that more formal media environments contain. In that interview, Harry spoke about the palace's rejection of his return plan. He described the institution as operating in a way that prioritized image over family. He said that the decision confirmed what he had always suspected, that the monarchy cared more about protecting its own reputation than about the well-being of the people within it. He did not mention the financial elements of his situation directly, but he spoke in terms that made clear he believed the family had resources and the will to help him, and had chosen not to. Those words reached Charles, and on the morning of March 11, 2026, 2 days after the interview was published, Charles authorized the elimination of the $2.7 million annual allowance. Let's talk about why. Because the why is the most important part of this story. And as always, the honest answer has more than one layer. The first layer is the most obvious one, the interview. Charles had maintained the private financial support through everything Harry had done publicly over 5 years because the support was private. Because there was a version of events in which the public Harry, the one who gave interviews and wrote books and filed lawsuits, and the private Harry, the one who was still in some meaningful sense his son, could be kept separate in Charles's mind. The public actions were a source of pain, but they were not, in Charles's understanding, a reason to withdraw the private support that was the last expression of the father-son relationship. The interview changed that calculation, because it was not just another public statement about the institution. It was a statement made publicly about the family's willingness to help Harry. A suggestion that resources existed and were being withheld by choice. A characterization of the decision-making behind the return plan rejection that framed it as callousness rather than as the considered institutional position that it actually was. By making that suggestion publicly, Harry had, in Charles's view, brought the private financial arrangement into the public conversation without permission. He had, in effect, told his audience that his family was choosing not to help him when they could, without disclosing that they had been helping him privately and continuously at the rate of $2.7 million a year. That, for Charles, was the line. Not the lawsuit, not the book, not the Oprah interview, not even the $59 million bill. All of those had been absorbed painfully, with the thread of private support kept intact. But the suggestion, made publicly, that the family was choosing not to help, made while the family was actively helping in the one way it had continued to help throughout everything, was something Charles was not willing to absorb. The support ended. Because continuing it, in the context of what Harry had said, would mean continuing to be characterized as unhelpful, while privately providing exactly the kind of help Harry was implying did not exist. That is not a position any parent can maintain indefinitely. And Charles did not. The second layer is financial and institutional, and it is directly connected to William's new authority. The formal transfer of final institutional decision-making that Charles made to his heir on March 10, 2026. Those close to the palace's internal discussions say that William was aware of the question of the ongoing allowance and had, in the context of his new institutional authority, made his own view on the subject clear. Not as an instruction to his father — the private financial relationship between Charles and Harry is not within the scope of the authority William has been given — but as an observation, communicated through the appropriate channels. The observation was this: that the ongoing private allowance, while legally and personally entirely within Charles's rights to maintain, was creating an institutional complication. That it was difficult to maintain the palace's stated position, that Harry was a non-working royal responsible for his own financial choices and their consequences, while simultaneously providing him with $2.7 million a year in private support. That the clarity of the institutional position required a corresponding clarity in the financial arrangements. William did not order the allowance ended, but his view was known. And Charles, in the context of the interview and in the context of wanting to give his heir the institutional landscape he needed to do the job he had now been given, made his decision. The third layer is the hardest to say, but it is real, and leaving it out would not be honest. Charles is a man facing serious health challenges. He is managing his reign, his legacy, his family, and his physical conditions simultaneously. The energy required for each of those things is finite, and the energy that has gone over 5 years into maintaining the thread of private support for a son who has used that period to cause the institution more damage than anyone in its recent history. That energy has a cost. Sometimes the decision to stop helping is not about anger. It is about the recognition that the helping is not helping, that the support, however well-intentioned, has not produced the change in behavior that would justify its continuation, that the person being supported has not used the support as a foundation for stability, but as a cushion beneath a continued pattern of choices that makes stability impossible. When a parent reaches that recognition, and many parents watching this will have reached it themselves at some point in their own circumstances with their own children, the decision to stop is not a withdrawal of love. It is a withdrawal of enabling. Charles stopped enabling because he could see, with the clarity that serious illness sometimes gives a person, that continuing to do so was not helping Harry. It was simply delaying the moment when Harry would have to face the full reality of the position his choices had created. Let's pause here. Because we are at the midpoint of this story, and the section ahead covers what the elimination of this allowance actually means for Harry's financial position in practical terms. If you know someone who has been following this story, a friend, a family member, someone who cares about the royal family and who would want to understand what is really happening, please share this video with them. It helps us reach more people, and it takes just a moment. Now let's talk about the numbers, because this is where the story becomes most concrete and most urgent. Harry's financial position before the elimination of the allowance was already serious. The failed court case against the Daily Mail had produced a liability estimated at somewhere between $25 and $30 million when legal costs on both sides are fully calculated. His own legal fees, the Sherborne retainer, the research teams, the years of preparation, account for approximately $15 million of that. The costs he will be ordered to pay to the Daily Mail account for the rest. The income available to service that debt had already been significantly reduced. The original Netflix deal, signed in 2020 for a reported $100 million, had largely been spent on productions that did not generate the returns that would justify renewal at a comparable level. Netflix had, in the weeks before this decision, formally ended its investment in Meghan's As Ever lifestyle brand. The Spotify deal had ended years earlier, with a fraction of the reported value actually paid. The book royalties from Spare were declining in the way that book royalties always decline after the initial sales surge. The Montecito estate costs significant money to maintain. The private security Harry requires, which the British government declined to provide after the courts upheld that decision, and which Harry has been funding privately ever since, costs approximately $2 million annually on its own. In that context, $2.7 million a year was not peripheral to Harry's financial picture. It was central to it. It was, in the absence of a large new income source, one of the primary things keeping the gap between his income and his outgoings manageable. Without it, that gap is no longer manageable in the way it has been. The question of what Harry does now, financially, practically, in the immediate term, is one that those around him are working through with urgency. There are assets that could be sold. The Montecito property, at current California real estate valuations, would generate enough to cover the court case liability and leave some remaining. But selling the house means giving up the physical home that has been the centerpiece of the California life Harry and Meghan built together. It means acknowledging that the life is changing in a way that cannot be undone. There are also income options that remain available. Harry's connection to the Invictus Games retains genuine commercial value. His personal brand, while damaged by the events of recent months, is not without residual strength in the American market. There may be commercial opportunities, properly structured and executed, that could generate meaningful income. But those opportunities take time to build, and the $2.7 million gap is immediate. The financial reality that Harry is now facing, the court case debt, the eliminated allowance, the reduced income streams, the ongoing security costs, the estate maintenance, is the accumulated consequence of every choice made since January 2020. Each individual choice, at the time it was made, could be justified. The financial implications of all of them together, arriving simultaneously, are severe. That is the financial reality, and Harry knows it. Let's talk about what comes next. Because despite the severity of the situation, the future is not entirely without the possibility of change. The $2.7 million allowance has been eliminated, with no provision for reinstatement. That is the formal position. But the formal position and the eventual reality are not always the same thing, and it would not be honest to present the elimination as an immovable, permanent condition without acknowledging that circumstances change. What would need to change for Charles to reconsider? The answer from those close to the palace is the same answer that applies to every other dimension of the Harry situation. Sustained, demonstrated change in behavior over time. Not a promise, not a proposal, not an interview in which Harry describes himself as willing to be different, but months and then years of actual different behavior that the institution can observe and assess. No public commentary about the family, no legal actions involving the institution, no characterizations of the family's willingness to help that misrepresent the actual situation, and a genuine engagement with the Invictus work, the thing Harry actually built, the thing that remains his most credible contribution, without the media architecture of grievance that has surrounded everything he has done since 2020. If that Harry exists, if the circumstances of the current crisis have produced a clarity about what actually matters and what needs to change, then the conversation about financial support, like the conversation about a formal role, becomes possible again. Whether that Harry can emerge from the current situation is not something that can be predicted. The people who know him best are not certain, and anyone who tells you with confidence that they know which way this will go is not being straight with you. What is certain is that the current path, the lawsuits, the interviews, the proposals that treat the family relationship as a negotiation, the public suggestions of family indifference while private support was ongoing, that path has now arrived at its destination. The destination is this: no court case victory, no return plan, no allowance, no open door. Just Harry in California with the life he chose and the full weight of the financial consequences of how he chose to live it. Let's end where this story is most human. There is a version of the father in this story that is easy to judge harshly. A man with extraordinary resources who has cut off his son at a moment of genuine crisis, who has added financial devastation to a situation already characterized by legal failure, family estrangement, and personal isolation. That version is not wrong about the facts. Charles has cut off the allowance. Harry is in financial crisis, and the timing, arriving days after the return plan rejection, could not feel more punishing to the person on the receiving end of it. But there is another version. A father who kept the thread intact for 5 years, while it cost him pain that people outside the family cannot fully imagine. Who maintained the private support while absorbing public attacks that questioned his character, his parenting, his institution, and his wife. Tell us whether you think Harry will find a way through what he is now facing. We read every comment, and your perspective matters to us more than we can say. And if you are not yet subscribed, please do it now. Click subscribe, turn on your notifications, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you. We will see you soon.